Hello, and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie, and today I'll be talking about Series 6, Episode 1, Sirens. I'll be exploring this ep with the help of my guest, Sunnysideeggers. Welcome back to the podcast, Sunny.
Hello, thank you so much for having me back.
I'm glad you enjoyed your previous appearance enough to come back.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's dive straight into the episode because before actually, I'll do a little intro about because there were quite a few changes between Series 5 and Series 6.
just a few, just like a couple things.
Just a few, yeah, and there's quite a lot of context to it. But I mean, I don't want to bore people, but I mean, it's pretty obvious from from what you see on the screen in front of you that things have changed quite dramatically because not only
Yes.
have they lost Red Dwarf, the ship, they've also lost Holly.
Holly, poor Holly.
Yeah, poor Holly. Just recently recorded back to reality and gave her a fun farewell in that one. Because I mean, at least if she never comes back, at least she ended on an absolutely wonderful, outstanding episode.
She did, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I still hold out the faintest of hopes that if there's any more that they might bring her back. Because I mean, it's staring in your
Yeah.
face.
Even
Why don't
just
they
like
just
a cameo kind of thing, like a nod or something would be kind of nice, but
yeah.
take what I can get.
Yeah, I mean, the really obvious one would be a return to the parallel universe, and then she could play Hilly, and they could still have Norman as Holly, since they clearly prefer him, unfortunately. But I mean, it's quite obvious, from the way they keep bringing back Norman that they prefer him. But I mean, they could
Yeah.
at least give her Hilly, which was her original first appearance anyway.
Yeah, her first appearance in the Red Dwarf universe. I mean, that would be, like you said, it would be fun to have both of them, bouncing
It
around.
would,
But
yeah. I mean, parallel universe is the only one where we get both holidays on
and
screen at the
in
same
and
time.
in Red Dwarf,
It would be nice.
parallel universes abound. So it's not, outside the realm of possibility. Just, another parallel universe. Don't worry about it.
Precisely, yes. Yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, out of universe, so to speak. Robin Dirk had just, how do I put this? Come back to the UK with their tails between their legs after their involvement in the failed US Red Dwarf pilots,
Yes.
which obviously didn't get picked up. So they were obviously somewhat pissed off about that. I
Fair.
mean, of course, Robert, as in Robert Llewellyn, had played Crichton in that as well. But I think he didn't take that as much to heart because, from the way he's talked about it in his book, I think he just had a nice US holiday and enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it was let's be real, it was a paycheck. He got paid to go hang out in the US and, a totally different production setting, and I'm sure it was like, exciting, it's something different, while still playing the same character. More or less. He's not hugely different in the US pilot, but yeah, I can understand him not being as, devastated about it as Robin Doug, but you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously for Robin Doug, I mean, if it had come off, it could have opened up all kinds of doors for them. But I mean, having said that, for the sake of the remaining UK cast and the future of the remaining of the UK show, I'm kind of glad it didn't because I mean, if it had taken off, then the UK show would probably have stopped after five.
yeah, that's true. They would probably be putting all their attention onto the American show, which I mean, it could have been interesting if they ran like concurrently, if like both shows existed at the same time, but logistically, I don't think that was ever a possibility of happening. But
Yeah, I
you never
mean,
know.
logistically, I'm not sure it would have been possible. I mean, not that I blame Rob and Doug, for taking the opportunity. I mean, obviously, it was a an amazing opportunity, and you can't really blame for seizing it. But I think the way it worked out, may ultimately have been better in the long run, or at least for the UK version of the show anyway.
Yes, yes, for the boys from the dwarf as we know them, it's probably for the best that the US show didn't take off.
Yes. While we're talking about it, I'm just going to share this little tidbit. One of the sirens who appears in this episode. Well, it's a very small part, but it's Captain Tao, who appears just before the false version of Kochansky. She's played by Anita Dobson, and she's killed almost instantly. And the interesting thing there is that Captain Tao was also the name of the captain in the US pilot. So I
Oh, I
think
didn't even notice that.
I think Rob and Doug was kind of getting out their feelings there.
That's funny. It was a little bit of, it was therapeutic for them to kill off the captain, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it must have been, yes.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I did not notice that at all. It shows how much I've seen the US pilot, I guess.
I have to confess, actually, I have never actually watched it because I suffer seriously from second-hand embarrassment. I've heard everything I've heard says it's terrible. I just can't
Fair.
face watch it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe one day I should, for the purposes of this podcast.
For research purposes only, maybe. Yeah, just look at it clinically. I think I watched. Is there more than one version? I think there's more than one version, and I do
Yeah,
remember
yeah. There,
stumbling
there is
across
two. There
them,
is two. So I understand. Yeah,
and I
yeah.
watched them just out of pure morbid fascination to see what was going on. Um, yeah, it's definitely it's something. It's something, but yeah, secondhand embarrassment is definitely real.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes, and also still on the changes. They did at least have some pressure taken off from Rob and Doug. I mean, because they brought in a new director, Andy Diemeny, who only directed Series 6. But I mean, from what the behind the scenes stuff I've watched, everyone seems pretty united in praise for him, and say he fitted in very easily, and did the job and stuff, and Series 6 does have a nice look to it. It's quite dark, but it's dramatic, I guess.
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, it's Red Dwarf has always had like a decent budget considering, the time and, the network it was on and such. But it definitely, as you go on, I guess it seems like maybe like a little more budget or like just they got a little more creative with their use of sets and
Oh, they
it,
did they did get a
yeah.
better budget after the early series, yeah, but not. I mean, Doug in particular was always like, oh, it wasn't that much more. We just use it more creatively, I mean,
Yeah,
so yeah,
got a
I
little
think
more thrifty with their things and yeah, but like it definitely yeah, but that's part of the charm too is the evolution of the set designs and the places they visit, the things they do with the sets and such. The how it's always a little different every season. But I think that's part of the charm, honestly, is like, well, what's it gonna look like this year? What's it
exactly, yeah.
where
I
are
mean,
they
I do
gonna go?
like. I do like the fact that it changes. I mean, okay, the changes they're not always successful. I'm looking at you, Sue, 7 and 8, but but the majority of the time, to be fair, the changes have worked and they've been good.
Yes.
Yeah, and also we're almost getting to the episode itself, but also behind the scenes, according to Doug and Rob at least, they were under pressure from the BBC to have the series ready quickly, so it could be broadcast. And the pace of filming was fast paced, and that was part of the reason, well, they adopted a certain form. You may have noticed, a lot of sort of space core directives and jokes from Cat about being deader than Corduroy or whatever the heck. I mean, that's another reason why. That's another reason why it feels a bit different from 5.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine the any sort of stress being put on a film crew being like, well, okay, I guess we gotta just whip through this, get it done. I'm sure that's pretty stressful. I
Yeah.
mean, it paid off. It was good. It was, you know.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's basically they wanted to make life more of a survival challenge for the crew, and they did that by taking away Red Dwarf, and marooning them on Starbug, and it works.
Yeah, which is so funny because like the show is literally called Red Dwarf, and they were like, you know what, we're gonna take away from this show, Red Dwarf, and yet it still worked.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you've got to admire their guts taking away the crew's safety blanket, so to speak.
Yeah, also like I mean that is true too because uh it would be very easy to fall into complacency with, just life on the dwarf. We're just kind of floating through space, whatever. And it added that sense of urgency, but also it was still an environment in which the characters could be the characters, and they still got into similar discussions and arguments, and so the charm and the appeal was still there because it was still them. It was just upped the sense of, I guess danger. They did get into a lot more shenanigans once they were on Starbug. Lots of
It's
crashes.
true, yeah, because obviously Starbug is prone to crashing, as you must have noticed.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so still on the subject of the behind the scenes, but I mean, I'm getting to the episode right now. The reason that we get an opening scene where Lister has amnesia was because apparently the BBC asked for a scene basically to explain the situation to the new viewers that they were hoping to pick up with series 6. So Rob and Doug thought, okay, we'll write a funny scene where he's got amnesia. So I mean, they made the best of it.
Yeah, so like it is kind of funny because I've never really I didn't watch it like originally airing, so the gaps in between, seasons when they did air, I've usually had access to either it on Netflix or DVDs or something. So I do forget that there's also, season breaks. So it's also, it's been a bit of time, probably should, even if you have been watching the show, we need to catch you up on, what's been going on potentially in that break. But because I didn't have a break with it, I would sometimes forget. And I was like, oh, right, it's a new season. Stuff has happened. They need to catch us up. So then Lister becomes the audience in that moment. So Crichton can give him some exposition to set up where we're going. But I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's
I mean,
pretty
they had to.
funny.
Exactly. I mean, what I mean is, they had to do exposition, but they made it funny and they made it in character. So I mean, good for them. And of course, it's also a very clever way of sort of setting up the later plot because we have Crichton mentioning Christine Kochansky, who we will later see a siren impersonate, and also Lister's delusion about being able to play the guitar, which again comes up again later. So it's all quite skillfully woven in.
I mean, also too, if you're ever going to have a chunk of exposition that needs to be given, like Crichton's the perfect one to do it. Like, just his delivery, the way he speaks, I love it. You're like, just talk, you silly android. Just go ahead and tell us all these random facts we need to know. I just love it.
Yeah, Crichton is at his most likable. Well, in I think in sort of about series 3 to 6. I mean, not that he's not likable in the Dave era, but during series 7 he goes through a whiny period. But I mean, in series
Mhm.
6, in series 6 he's likable.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, yeah. So obviously the setup, is that obviously that um they're chasing Red Dwarf. They've only got so many supplies. So the two living crew members, Cat and Lister, had to go into deep sleep for over 200 years because otherwise they would die. I mean that makes sense. And Crichton, in the meantime, has just been cheerfully doing his chores and customising the waste compactor.
Yeah, he's
I love
just,
I love I love the way I love the way he whistles as he's doing that.
he's just tinkering about, just having a good time.
Yeah, and it did also occur to me that obviously Rimmer, being a hologram, he could have stayed on, but I'm pretty sure that both he and Crichton said no.
Yeah, I feel like that was a mutual decision between the two of them. He said, "You know what? No, we'll just shut you off for a little bit. It's probably for the best."
It's funny, yeah. I mean, because obviously, I mean, in the past, Rimmer has been very no, you're not turning me off under any circumstances. But I guess the fact that Cat and Lister were going into deep sleep was enough for him to agree.
Yeah, I guess he was like, the only interesting people are going to sleep, so I.
I'm glad he managed to get over his distrust that they wouldn't turn him back on sufficiently
Yes,
to be
I guess
true.
he was putting a lot of faith that Crichton would actually turn him back on when they woke up.
I think he may have been thinking more that Lister would, but who knows?
Who
If
knows?
quite,
Who knows?
I mean, I don't know, because Lister is how do I put this? The one with a conscience, so to speak.
Yes.
He will turn people back on even if he doesn't like them.
Yeah, he would just feel too guilty about it.
Yeah, so then of course, we get the Rimmer's reintroduction as Crichton reboots his light beam.
Yeah, quite the reboot scene it is.
Yes, it's funny the way they go through all those rabbits and birds and whatever before they land on his hologram.
Which is funny. Like the implication is like they could just randomly make him like a turtle or something. Like his projection could be
That is
anything.
funny, isn't it? Yeah.
They could have utilized that. That was the potential.
And also when they're loading his neuroses and it just goes on and on.
Yes, yes. It's a pretty funny little gag. Also, it seems kind of like, well, we had Lister with his amnesia to be like, okay, well, we'll catch you up on the situation. And it's like, hey, remember Rimmer? He's a total smeghead. Let's make sure you remember this.
It's funny the way Lister very briefly goes, "Oh, he's my best friend, is he?" And then quite like, "Sir,
Sir,
you're
you
sick."
are sick.
Which is just
He's
funny.
It's so funny because Crichton's so like concerned. He's like, "Oh no, did I do it wrong? Did I not put him into deep sleep correctly? Has he been damaged?" He's like definitely very concerned that Lister seems to think that him and Rimmer are best friends.
Yes,
I feel like
it's
Crichton's
funny.
like, "I thought I was your best friend."
Yeah, and it is funny the way when it's as soon as Lister remembers who it is. Oh, that Rimmer.
Like there's other Rimmers that he remembered. Oh, that
Yeah.
one.
Oh, briefly, you may also have noticed there's a lot of emphasis in this scene about how much of a slob Lister is. I mean, they're going really kind of going a bit overboard into my way of thinking.
Oh yeah, it's quite a look. It's quite a look. Yeah, it was definitely like pretty extreme considering that like Cat was fine when he woke up.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, well, of course we'd actually see Cat wake up. I mean, maybe that was because maybe he refused to have anyone around when he woke up so he could make himself impeccable again.
That feels very on brand for Cat. Yes, he's like, "Don't look at me."
Don't look at me. I've got to get into a shower this moment or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's true. We don't see him actually wake up, but it definitely does show the juxtaposition between the two when you have Lister looking like that and Cat looking dapper as always.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And then, of course, we get a cut to Lister's memories back. The beard's gone, and of course he's back to the oniony cornflakes and the Tabasco sauce and so on, and it's a relief. I mean, to be honest, actually, I think Lister actually looked kind of cute with that ridiculous beard, but I mean, I still prefer his usual look.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It gives him like a little baby face when he's all clean shaven, and you just want to go, ooh,
Yeah.
pinch your cheeks.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, they are, I mean, because of the nature of the production, the way they're writing it, they're kind of playing up the particular aspects of characters. I mean, with Lister, it's his snobbiness. With Rimmer, it's I think his cowardice and yeah, and so on and so forth. But it's I mean, it does work, I mean, it certainly works a lot better than it does in the couple of series that come after it, which I won't keep going on and on about because
It's for another podcast. Don't worry about it. We'll
exactly,
get there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll deal with those when I get to them.
Fair.
That sounds as though I'm going to have a fight with all soon, doesn't it?
It's gonna be a challenge.
Oh dear. Oh well. Okay, so back to Sirens, and of course more exposition. But I mean, again, this is kind of necessary because everyone who's watching this, if they've watched it before, they're wondering, well, where the hell is Red Dwarf? Why are they on Starbucks? So obviously they have to explain this,
Hmm.
and yeah, and Rimmer, of course, naturally he blames Lister for losing it.
Of course, of course. There's no way Rimmer at all could have ever contributed to anything bad happening. It would never, never happen.
Yeah. As Crichton points out, they didn't actually lose it; it was stolen. And of course, we find out in the last episode of Series 7 that they're actually stolen by Crichton's nanobots, which is one of the weird plot twists.
Definitely, definitely not the answer I expected. That tiny little
I mean, to be fair,
nanobot stole it.
having it stolen by Crichton's nanobots is not something that anyone would have come up with if they'd been trying to guess it. I don't think, to be fair.
Yes, that is very true. I don't know how we could have possibly guessed something like that, but I mean, that's gotta love it. They keep you on your toes of you never figure what's going on.
Exactly. Yes. It's a bizarre thing to have happened, but I mean, on the upside, it's as I said, not something that any fan, would have guessed in advance if they hadn't known. So, well done for confounding the fan base, I guess.
Yes, yes. Bravo, bravo. A plus.
Yes. Okay. So yeah. So and then of course we get some of the most infamous Space Corps directives, like no member of the Corps should ever report for active duty in a ginger toupee.
see, like whenever I hear these like Space Corps directives of very specific things, I'm like, well, obviously something happened in which a crew member showed up to active duty in a ginger toupee and something terrible happened. Like it just it's funny because it very much reads like any of those like drug commercials that like list the side effects when it's basically if it's ever happened at all they have to list that it could potentially happen, so it feels like it was a one-off very isolated incident that happened, but they still had to add it to the Space Corps because who knows, it could potentially happen again. But you're like, what? I want to know, just want to know what happened and why a ginger toupee.
Exactly. I also kind of want to know what happened that they had to put in another directive. No officer with false teeth should attempt oral sex in zero gravity.
Yeah, that one is, I mean, it kind of lays it all out there for you. Something definitely happened.
So, which officer did that happen to, and what happened? Do I actually want to know?
Yeah. You want to
Probably
know?
not.
probably for the best that we just have the directive and nothing else.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so moving on. We they establish, that they're, in a pretty dire situation. They only got 3 months oxygen. Rimmer's hologram is on battery backup. That their supplies are running low. So they really have to recover Red Dwarf, and that is why they decide to take this dangerous shortcut through an asteroid belt, which is crawling with sirens, as it turns out.
Yes, yeah, they definitely ramp up the danger. And like you said too, like with the changing of getting rid of Red Dwarf, well, stuff's more serious now. You're not on this cushy spaceship with all the amenities you would ever need. Uh, it's survival mode now because well, you need oxygen. Well, two of them need oxygen, um, but
Exactly, yeah.
you need power to. I mean, Crichton has to recharge too, I'm sure, and you got Rimmer, and so there's like it's just a need to find Red Dwarf, or if we can't do that, then we have to resupply somewhere.
Exactly. So it's a good way of explaining why they would make this otherwise pretty stupid decision, because they're desperate. They really want to get back to a dwarf. So then, of course, they arrive in this what turns out to be a spaceship graveyard, and they see and they see a recording which is simultaneously funny and gruesome.
Yes, which is again pretty on par for Red Dwarf. I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, okay, that was funny. Like they make a scary situation a little funny. You're having a chuckle even though you're like, what are they getting into?
Yeah, I mean this poor Astro chomping at his burger, clearly petrified and etc. And then it gets approached by a siren, and then the funny thing is, the audience laugh at a crucial moment, and when red stuff goes on the screen, and obviously you assume it's his blood, but actually it's the ketchup from his burger.
That cracks me up every time because it's so much is just off camera. You're not seeing anything. You're just hearing his like terrified voice. He's like, my ketchup, my burger. Like
Oh,
it's just so silly.
I do love that joke about someone else who'd have already died. Writing sirens with their blood and intestines. Who would do that? Someone who badly needed a pen.
Yeah, it's like it should be like a serious, scary moment, but you're just chuckling over someone who badly needed a pen. Like what?
Oh, I do have to give Chris a round of applause for the absolutely beautiful feint he does after we see the Astro die.
He's just gone. Just poof.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a good scene. It's a good scene. It cuts the tension a little bit. But we're like, oh, okay, no, they're definitely getting into some shenanigans here. What's going on in this
Exactly. I mean,
in
it's
this
still funny, but
area?
it's a good way of setting up, that this is a serious threat. The danger is genuine. Hmm.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we get the sirens start up their illusions, and of course, it starts with a very sort of basic kind of, I say, kind of 60s Star Trek kind of thing, yeah, where we get sort of two sirens posing as tempesturesses who need seed spreaders to save their planet. I mean, to be fair, I don't really watch original Star Trek. I mean, I don't know if this kind of scenario ever actually happened, but it kind of seems like 60s kind of Star Trek.
It definitely, yeah, or at the very least, just 60s sci-fi. Like what they envisioned the future was like I'm drawing a blank. Where did they have like silver like suits on, like shiny silver material? Is that what their clothing's made out of?
Yeah,
Like,
sort of kind of shiny, kind of silver and
yeah,
gold.
that's the like. Oh, the future is metallic and very. Yeah, it has that vibe for sure. Where you're like, come on, guys, you know this isn't real, right?
To be fair, three of them immediately realise it's not real, and Cat is fooled initially, but then he does after about 2 minutes, he does say, "Do you think they're Sorens?"
Yeah, bless him. He does smarten up a little. And yeah, no, this isn't real, is it? Too good to be true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, to be fair, Crichton does say that was only the level of sophistication required to lure the cat. But to be fair, he does twig. It just takes him a minute.
Yes, he's not quite as dumb as we're all led to believe. I think, I mean, he's a cat. He does have some self-preservation skills.
Exactly. Yeah. Then, of course, we move up to the one which is targeting Lister, and it's interesting that in order to to make it seem more realistic, they don't start with Kochansky. They start with a different character, Captain Tau, to make it seem as though this might actually genuinely be another crew under threat, which is smart of the Sirens, I guess. And yeah, there's a little sort of behind the scenes thing which from this. I don't know how you probably well. Have you watched the series 6 documentary? Might I ask? I mean, it's fine if you haven't. But what I'm about to say, they go into there.
I don't remember if I've seen it or not.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I'll just say what I was going to say then. The actress Anita Dobson was pretty well known at the time because she'd been in EastEnders, which is a very popular soap here, and also she's also well known for being the she was a partner then, but she's now the now married to Brian May of the the famous rock band Queen.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I do think I remember hearing that fact that she was married to him.
And there's more to it than that because later in the episode when obviously we hear Lister play the guitar like a diva. Obviously that's not Craig play it. It's somebody else. It's somebody else's hands. And originally they asked Brian May if he might be available to sort of pose as Lister's guitar playing hands. According to Doug, he did want to do it, but he wasn't actually available. But apparently Anita heard about this and said, "Well, I'm actually a fan of the show. Is there a part available? Could I play a part?" And that's how she ended up playing this very small part.
That's amazing. I love that. I love when when celebrities and other actors and just famous people when they're fans of things and they just kind of go, "Hey, I love this thing. Can I show up?" And then you get some very random cameos of people you would not expect in certain things. Obviously I'm not super familiar with EastEnders. I haven't seen it, but I can imagine, being like, "Oh my God, what is she doing here?" Like that. I love that excitement of being like, "Whoa, there's a famous person in this thing that I like." That's kind of
Yeah, I
cute.
mean, of course,
It's just
she's
like,
not the only famous person who pops up in this. We get Jenny Agiter too. I don't know how well known she is in the US, but I mean, she was a pretty successful actress, in some back in the 80s and 90s.
yeah, the name doesn't ring a bell for me, unfortunately. And I always feel I'm like, I just need to obviously watch more British TV, then I would recognize everybody when they guest starred on another thing. But unfortunately,
Oh well, the thing you're most likely to have seen her in actually is An American Werewolf in London. The
oh, I
female
love
lead
that
in that.
movie.
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
she's a female lead in that. Yeah.
okay, okay. That makes. Oh, I'm gonna have to rewatch both again concurrently, and
Oh, but by all means do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When we get to Jenny Agutter, I will praise her because I'm a fan of her brief appearance. But going back to the hallucination that we're on, of course, we then see Claire Grogan's version of Kochansky, and this is her final appearance
yes,
in the show. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's of
it's
course it's a very different one from how we've seen her before. I mean,
yes.
yeah. I mean, she's kind of action woman here.
Yeah, she's giving off very much like Sigourney Weaver from Aliens vibes. Like
You know,
she's gonna survive. She's gonna make it out. And it's also interesting too that obviously the sirens had to adapt their method to try and entrap the boys. But it is interesting too. The one that's targeting Lister too is very much, well, A, we know he very much is infatuated with Kachansky, but B, it's also very much like a rescue scenario, like, life and death. We need to go help these people, which is very like in tune with Lister's character of like he's a very compassionate, caring guy, even if, he's a bit slobby, but like, there's very much like, well, she's in dire need, like we need to help her rather than, oh yeah, we're gonna hook up later. You know what I mean? Like he's very much,
exactly,
we have
yeah.
to
I
help.
mean, we get the appealing, we get the one that
Of
appeals to
course.
his feelings. Yeah, come on.
But they try and catch him with more of the sympathetic, compassionary type angle. So I was like, okay, these sirens are pretty clever.
They are, yeah. I was thinking about it. I think, to be fair, if they hadn't, if they just focused on Captain Tau and hadn't immediately killed her, I think even that might have been enough to make him want to go and rescue her. But they knew that if they brought in Kochansky and Jim and Bexley as well, that would absolutely clinch it immediately.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, understandably.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I know, obviously, in universe, since he knows that sirens are targeting him, it is a stupid reaction, but it's a very understandable human reaction.
Because also, like, what if you're wrong, right?
Exactly,
Like,
yes.
what if? And that alone would be like, well, if I'm 99% sure it's a siren illusion, but on that 1% chance that it might not be, like, that'd be so stressful.
Exactly, yes. I mean, to be honest, if Lister had been by himself, he would be dead in this
Yeah,
instant,
he
because
would be,
he
unfortunately.
wouldn't be, he wouldn't have been able to live with the what if it is Kochansky scenario, so he would have gone and tried to rescue them.
Yes,
It's a good thing that the others were there to stop him.
basically. Yeah, poor Lister.
Oh, poor, yeah, poor Lister, because I mean, obviously, it's it's um it's kind of set up by the show as fundamental to his character that he wants to settle down with Christine Kuchansky and have twin boys, Jim and Bexley. I mean, of course, he didn't. I mean, he has already given birth himself as well to Jim and Bexley.
He's halfway there. He just needs to get the Kachansky aspect, and he's good.
Yeah, but of course he had to give them up, So the sirens are really, sort of going for the emotional jugular here, So yeah,
Yeah, they're pretty savage.
yeah, but poor Lister, it's not dwelt on obviously because the pace of the episode is pretty frantic, but they
Yeah.
really sort of target his vulnerability here,
Yeah.
yeah. Then of course the others manage to make him realise that it's not, and but the illusions continue. I mean, now they decide to um attack them with a fake meteorite.
Yes. Oh my
I, I
gosh.
love I love Crichton here. I'm hoping to establish a reputation from this.
Oh, Crichton. Oh,
It
Crichton, I
works
love
because he's
him.
actually right that the meteorite is fake, and then of course it's immediately followed by a real one, and Rimmer's like, "Oh, it's fake. It's fake. I've got it in hand," and of course this one's real.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Which is like just again on brand for Rimmer, being like he sees, Crichton got them through. Well, it's fine. No, I got this. It's fake. Haha. And then no, it's not.
Yeah, it's kind of there's this kind of this ongoing power struggle between Rimmer and Crichton, but it's kind of very one-sided on Rimmer's part.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Crichton's not like trying to show him up. He's just, he's fairly competent most of the time, and he gets it done, and he's not trying to do it on purpose. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, not most of the time. Maybe sometimes when Rimmer's being particularly obnoxious, he might
Yes,
take
of
a bit of
course.
relish in rubbing it in, But in this instance, he's not
Yeah,
trying to do that. Yeah,
he's just trying to keep everyone alive. And Rimmer's like,
exactly.
how
Yeah.
could I make this about me?
Yes, me.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me see. So then, of course, I mean, I do have to say, props to the rest of the crew for not saying, Rimmer, this is your fault that we have now crashed on an asteroid.
Yeah, they're like, I don't know, it's just another Monday for us with Rimmer, just messing
Well,
stuff
do you
up, I
know that
guess.
if it'd been anybody else, that Rimmer would have rubbed it in? This is all your fault.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, and then of course, someone has to, go out onto this that it's cruel. It's going to be me. I'm going to be out there, going to be out there being brave. Really. Well, I was going to say really they should have sent Crichton, but actually we find out later that even that wouldn't worked. So
Yes.
to be fair,
Yeah,
no matter who had gone out, they would have targeted them.
no one was safe. I do
Exactly.
enjoy that, like, there's certain scenarios where, like, in theory, you're like, well, Crichton's an android, it should be fine. But then he's like, oh no, like, my electronic brain has organic components, so I'm susceptible to this thing too, or whatever. Like, there's like these little loopholes where no, Crichton's gonna get dragged in with the rest of it, and he's gonna have to suffer like everyone else.
Yes, they
It's
find
good they
creative ways of
include him.
they find creative ways of getting around it, and I like that because obviously, it increases the dramatic tension if you think the one who should be invulnerable to the danger, it turns out they actually are vulnerable, and they do that with Rimmer too a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of nice because you're like, well, in theory, you're like, oh, well, they're fine and they'll save the day. You're like, well, no, now we're all on an even playing field and we're all screwed and we need to work together to figure this out. And it's also, it would be
Exactly.
really boring if you're like, well, Crichton's an android and nothing can ever hurt him. You're like, okay, but why though? It's not, it's not as entertaining, I guess, or because then it's just like you've got an out. Crichton's always gonna save the day, and it's nicer to not know exactly who's gonna defeat the thing or figure it out. So it just keeps it interesting.
Exactly. Good for Rob and Doug. Because it's skillful writing. And then, of
Mhm.
course, we get Lister gets another siren, and this time it's. I'm trying to think of a tactful way to put this, but there isn't one really. It's it's the girl he had a crush on as a teenager, and she's all done up in frankly, a dominatrix outfit, and aggressively coming onto him.
Yes, it's so funny to me that it's the girl he had a crush on, but he doesn't remember her name.
It's
She's
funny, isn't
just
it?
Pete Tranter's sister.
I kind of, headcanon it as, she was obviously a lot older than him, and he maybe didn't even know Pete Tranter very well, so he just sort of, ogled her from a distance and was too shy even to find out her name. But it is funny that he would refer to her that way rather than by her actual name.
Yeah, it's really funny. It just, I think it's just one of those things where it adds some humor to a stressful, scary situation because, like, we're all pretty aware. Like, obviously, this is a siren. You've crashed on an asteroid, and this whole area is infested with them. There's no way this isn't a siren. Plus, Pete Tranter's sister was obviously dead. You guys are so far in the future. Like, this is just, it's not a possible situation. But the fact that she doesn't have a name, she's just Pete Tranter's sister. It's just so funny when he just keeps repeating that phrase when he's talking to her.
But right, actually, having him repeat sister is a lot funnier than just having him say some random name.
Yeah, it's just don't you do it, Pete Tranter's sister.
Stay back.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And it's also interesting that if another siren hadn't chosen that moment to attack, it would actually have worked.
Yes.
So yeah, yes, I mean, that kind of highlights the vulnerability. Oh, and by the way, it's obviously incredibly gross when we see him kissing the bug thing.
Yes, yes, but like I feel like they probably I don't know because the bug thing is so gross and like but it's a cool costume. I'll give him that. Like creature wise, you're like, yeah, that's pretty gross. It's pretty alien looking. It's pretty all right. But it's also like yet it's gross and yet still funny because it's Lister and we associate him as being kind of slobby. So you're like, okay, this seems sort of like something Lister would do, but also it's still gross. You know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah, I
I,
mean,
yeah.
he's imagining it's Pete Tranter's sister, not a bug. But yeah,
Yes, not a bug, but it's actually a bug.
yes. It is a great kind of, the way they do the kind of, well, they say, the director says in the documentary, he decided, to sort of do this sort of big romantic sweeping circular shot, that
Yes.
you get in romantic films. And then, of course, the reveal that no, it's not a beautiful woman, it's a bug.
A bug. Yeah, it's definitely shot very much like a romantic film. Like, oh, they're finally reunited, and now it's whoo, and it's a giant gross bug thing. Oh yeah, it's a good one. It's definitely groan inducing, but also a few chuckles because what a silly scenario to be a viewer of.
Exactly, yeah. And then I do like the way the next siren, that has killed the Pete Tranter's sister one, decides to pose as Crichton because that is clever. But then, of course, it makes a fatal mistake of calling him Dave.
So
Crichton has
close. So
and Crichton has
close.
ever in a million years call Lister Dave. He never, I don't think he ever has in the show.
Yeah, it because I think that he used to say in like his first season, I think he would say Mr. David, but
Yeah,
I don't think he's
I
ever
think
said Dave.
yeah. I mean, it's like I think he would blow a gasket if he actually said Dave.
It's just
It's just
far too casual to call him.
exactly. He couldn't possibly do that.
Just wouldn't be
But
proper.
anyway, yeah. So of course, Lister instantly twigs and manages to fight that one off. And then I love how we cut back to the cockpit, and we don't see this one. We just hear it because it's funnier to hear it. Oh, Smeg, it's a TV weather girl from Channel 27 doing obscene things with her pointy stick.
Yes, that one's probably best left to the imagination than actually shown.
Exactly. It works better that way. It's funnier that way too.
Mhm. Very much so.
So of course, these sirens, who are which you've got to give them credit for resourcefulness. We get yet another siren. This one decides to pose as Lister, so that they have to let both Listers on board because they don't know they don't know which is actually Lister.
Mhm. Yes, very much. It's funny because it hits several of the like sci-fi type tropes of like, well, who's the real one, and like there's some, but like they're just played off in they're like well executed, I guess. They don't feel like hokey as you go through these scenarios where you're like, okay, well, obviously, one of them's the siren, but we don't know which one, and I don't know. It plays out in that lovely comedy gold type way that Red Dwarf is so good at doing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I like the scenarios they go through. Of course, they have to have a sloppiness joke because it's Lister. They have to.
Hmm.
But then
Gotta throw one in.
yeah, but then they hit on the thing they cleverly set up earlier about the Lister being under the delusion that he can play the guitar well, and then of course this is it's a very neat way, of unmasking the siren. It reads Lister's mind and it plays the way he thinks he can play. That's neat.
Yes, that's its undoing is that. But see, that's also it's kind of sweet though because that truly means that Lister is 100% convinced that he's always playing amazing music, and he does not understand why everyone hates him playing his guitar. He's like, wow, like I don't get it. I'm playing music for you guys. Why don't you like it? You're like,
Oh, poor
oh,
bloke. Oh, I'm just gonna say, the credit we get, featuring the hands of Phil Manzanera. He apparently was a member of Roxy Music, so obviously a successful professional musician, which explains why he could play that well.
yes. And that's funny too, just having that like you're like, whoa. Because like if you don't know that, someone else's hands are playing it for that moment in that little clip, then you're like, okay, can he actually play guitar? Like you have that moment of like,
Yeah,
oh shit.
I mean,
Is
as
he-
it says in the documentary, I mean, you actually can't tell. It really does look like Lister is playing the guitar like a rock god.
Yeah, it does. He's rocking out.
Yeah, and then of course we get this odd little moment because Lister gets upset that they saved his life by playing on his dodgy guitar ability.
Destroying his dreams.
And yeah, and the siren sneakily seizes the opportunity to sneak off, and Rimmer's the one who points this out. And there's this weird little sort of gap, where they're focusing on Lister arguing with Crichton and Katz before you cut back to Rimmer, and he gets this. He's like, where's it gone? It's kind of Rimmer. You were standing there the whole time. How could you not see the siren sneaking off? And kind of odd that Rimmer is the only one who does not who does not get a siren, and you can kind of headcanon in that little gap that actually he does get a siren, and it distracted him enough that the siren managed to escape.
Yeah, that is fair. I wonder if it was probably like, let's be honest, it was probably like a time issue as you've got a lot
I
of
mean, I
stuff
know
you're trying to cram
out
into
of out of universe, it's probably just
out of
just the way that
universe.
it happened to be
Yeah,
shot. But in
but
universe, I
yeah,
mean,
no,
I,
that's fair.
I think I'm actually going to. I think I'm actually going to give credit to because there's this little fanfic by a very good writer called Roadster Guy who posits that in that tiny little gap, the siren just impersonated Lister making a sexy face at Rimmer.
Oh, and of course, Rimmer wouldn't ever say anything about that. He would not. Why would he
Precisely,
tell? Why would
he'd
he
rather
tell
die,
anyone else about that? He'd rather die again than.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I mean, ever since I read that little story, I've decided, okay, that's what happened.
Fair. It's valid. I support that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so moving on, the siren escapes down to the engine room. Crichton goes after it, and this is where, of course, we discover that no, Crichton isn't immune to the sirens either, because it simply impersonates his creator, Professor Mamet.
Which is like so clever. Like these sirens, I mean, the boys are lucky they got out of the situation because like the way the sirens like escalate their handling of the situation is like, oh, okay, they're obviously learning and they make a few, little mistakes along the way, but like pretty scary. They just read your mind and find your like weaknesses or whatever. Because poor Crichton, he's like, well, you look like my creator, and my circuits say I have to do exactly what you say because that's how I was programmed. Even though consciously he's like, you're not real. You're not actually Professor Mammon. He's aware, but because the siren looks like Professor Mammon, he has to comply. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is very interesting actually, because I mean, honestly, watching this episode, I mean, I think the sirens are actually even cleverer than the polymorph. The way, as you say, they sort of escalate their psychological attack. Okay, well, if that didn't work, then maybe this one will. It's
Yeah,
very
they
clever.
definitely they learn, which is scary. Given enough time, they could probably, I don't know, spooky. But yeah, I would say they're definitely smarter than the polymorph. But I think also mainly like the polymorph was just so, I don't know, it was more like base instinct. It was kind of just acting on. It was like, okay, well, I'll turn to this to do this, and it's
Exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Whereas the sirens, they're kind of, I don't know, more psychologically sophisticated, possibly.
Yes, yeah, they definitely work a lot harder for their food than the polymorph does.
Exactly, yes. Hmm. Yeah, okay. I've got well, I mean, I know she's only on screen for about 2 minutes, but I really enjoy Jenny Agutter in this role. It's just nice to see as I said, apparently she actually, she wanted to do it, of course she was a fan of the show, so well, that's always nice to hear.
Yeah, that always like fills me with like a warm fuzzy feeling when I'm like, oh, there's people who are like, oh, I just really like this, so I just want to be a part of it. Like they want to be a part of the universe of a thing that they're also a fan of, and that they had like a good experience also doing the thing also makes me feel good. It's just nice to know that everybody's having a good time, basically.
Yes, it's lovely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I actually I enjoy Professor Marriott so much that myself and my co-writer Lord Valerie Mimes made up a sort of backstory for her in one of our Vic's Blood of the Smegged, and well, it's a Victorian version of her, and we just felt, she kind of needed to be fleshed out a bit more. So, we had fun doing that.
Yeah, yeah, there's that's the nice thing too about Red Dwarf is obviously the stories are focused on the main four, but there's all these interesting side characters. Sometimes they get, a couple episodes worth. Sometimes they're just a one-off, but like there's so many interesting people and I guess creatures that exist in the Red Dwarf universe, and it's always fun to see them pop up in people's fics. Um,
Yes, yeah, it's just so much fun, deciding, okay, this character got about 2 minutes screen time, but I'm going to expand upon them, because it's just fun.
Yeah, some of them it's interesting the impact they make on the fandom, even if they've got, like you said, 2 minutes of screen time. Well, they deserve more. So let's throw them into the mix.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are other characters, that I could get into about that, but I mean, it's not relevant, and we're sort of running out of time here, so I'll go on to the next bit. Um, so yeah, I mean, what we learn, what little we learn about Crichton, his creator here, is intriguing because I mean, obviously, it makes sense, that unlike whichever how do I put this? Moron decided to create simulants. She programmed in that Crichton could not harm her under any circumstance. I mean, come on, that's just basic common sense.
Right? Like, isn't that like robotics 101? Whenever you're creating some sort of, you can't hurt me, don't hurt me.
Under any circumstances, you're forbidden. You're
Yeah,
absolutely forbidden. You can't. You physically
just
can't do
can't.
it. Seriously, I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, clever.
whoever
It's
created
clever.
whoever created stimulants was an idiot.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, so the last bit, of course. I mean, yeah. I mean, I enjoy the sort of eerie bit in the engine room where Lister and Cat and Crichton, sorry, Lister and Cat and Rimmer are searching for Crichton, and then suddenly Rimmer's light beam goes because again they've established later, that his hologram is on battery backup, so it makes
Yeah.
sense that his battery would suddenly need recharging. So and then there were two. It's a very eerie situation, Lister and Cat are trying to find Paul Crichton, and the siren is there, and of course. It thinks of yet another disguise. This time it impersonated a drinks machine.
Again, learning, adapting.
And again, to be fair on Lister and Cat, they do almost instantly twig. Hold on, why
Like,
is there a
wait a
woman
second.
in the
Hmm.
engine room? But they twig a second too late, and oh dear, they're about to get their brains sucked. Except Crichton saves the day.
Yes, he does.
I absolutely love that line where you come out, he's cubed. I'm almost annoyed.
Crichton, I swear, the patience that he has is it's admirable. That he's like, I'm almost annoyed. It's like he's like, okay, good game, Siren. That was smart. I can't even be mad about it. Can't even be mad.
Yeah, that was very smart. Yes, yeah, I absolutely. Like I said, absolutely love the way that that Crichton just as a cube just throws himself on on the
Yeah.
siren and kills it and saves the day. I mean, that's such a neat ending.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's just like a very like visceral, like I'm just gonna chuck my body and my cubed form will just crush it. It's not how you expected the situation to be resolved, but happy happy that Cat and Lister didn't get the brains sucked out by a straw. Happy about that.
Exactly. Very happy about that. Yes. Uh-huh. Okay, so we have now almost finished, except there was a final scene where again more classic Crichton. Okay, I may be a cube, but I'm still going to go about my duties.
Just prepared to just keep on doing what he's doing, even if it's a cube form. I do enjoy though too. There's not really like an explanation for how they decube him. He's just don't worry about it. It's fine.
I think he says something about when I have finally finished the laundry, I will engage my self repair mechanism. So I mean, yeah. So it's well, basically, obviously that is his nanobots. He has these little
Yeah,
nanobot
they're
robots.
foreshadowing the nanobots because they don't actually like. I don't think they're mentioned at all until the like reveal that they stole Red Dwarf.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not mentioned at all, but until the episode Nanaki, where because quite has to actually explain what they are to the others. So yeah, but I mean, so I
It's
suppose you could say that
foreshadowing.
they are foreshadowed a little bit here, but I'm pretty sure Rob and Doug hadn't thought about the Matchel being robots. Of course, to be fair, by the time Nanaki was written, it was Doug Solo, so it was probably Doug who thought of that part.
Fair.
Okay, so well, we're at the end of the episode. So, all that remains is to how I mean, I should probably have warned you about this, but I think it actually works better to if it's just spontaneous. So, which is ranking the episode out of 10, both for overall quality and also for slashiness.
Okay, out of 10. For overall quality, I do quite enjoy that. It's so tough because I love so many of them. But it's starting off a new season, a new era, as it were. Um, and it's got Pete Tranter's sister. Gotta love Pete Tranter's sister. I'd probably rate this one, let's say 7. Probably say 7 out of 10. Um, because there's a few memorable bits, but it's not like my favorite super quotable episode. But we've got a new vibe going on. You got all the sexy space ladies. So I'd probably say 7 out of 10 for overall quality. In the slashiness department, it's definitely not one of the slashier episodes to me. Out of 10, I'd probably say like 3, maybe. Yeah. Not
That's
a
fair
lot
enough. I
sticks
mean,
out to me. Yeah.
that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the slashiness score. I mean, I agree it's not the slashiest of episodes. I mean, I've given it a slightly higher rating. I was going to give it sort of 5 or 6, but to be honest, that is mainly because I'm kind of reading into the fact that Rimmer is the only one who doesn't get a siren, and kind of theorising that he actually did get one and we just don't see it.
Fair. Fair. Okay. Yeah, that's valid.
That's my head canon. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's just for fun. Anyway, overall out of 10, it's weird because it's never been particularly one of my favourites. I've always liked it, but it's never particularly been one of my favourites. But this time around, for some reason, I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Nice. Nice.
And that wraps up this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologamet for technical help, and also to my guests, Eggers. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on Tumblr or Discord on the posts where I'll be linking to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. And also my customary reminder that if you want to look at earlier episodes of the podcast, just search on YouTube for Smeg and the Femmes. And the next episode we'll be covering is a very memorable one in the history of the show. And it is Rimmer finally getting a hard light body in Legion. I hope you'll join us then. For now, goodbye.